So you've been here before to do the Chostakovitch second cello concerto, in fact, and we asked you at relatively short notice to come and do the first.
Yes.
I suppose two questions. One is, what happens when you get the phone call that says you've got to do a concerto in a couple of weeks that you weren't planning on doing?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
Especially during during this time where we've all been much less active than usual in so many ways, and much more active perhaps in other ways. But this is actually, I've done a lot of live streams and live broadcasts happily since this all began, and I did, of course, in the very early days of the pandemic, I did some recordings just from my bedroom, which I put on social media and things like that. But this is my first concert for a live in-person audience since this all began. So when Josh asked me to do it, I was really, of course, besides the fact that we love working together and it's great repertoire, and it's repertoire that is, that's super familiar, and I played a lot. I was just really happy.
And I would imagine that Shostakovich is exhausting in a different way. It always strikes me as such an emotionally draining piece.
Absolutely.
How does it feel? Also interesting for me compared to the second concerto, which is a very different beast.
Completely different. I love them both, and actually Josh and I have had this argument, which because I adore them both. They're both masterpieces. So it's not to say anything, but the second for me is even stronger, more powerful, and way more personal. He indulged me. It was like 2 years ago that we did the second concerto together. So he happily agreed to do that with me. So I was very happy about that. But especially also that we're all feeling so emotionally fraught now with the current situation. There's some sort of there's a kind of subconscious urgency, I think, that we all feel when playing this music, in addition to what's of course is so clear, in the score. And so it feels like a very appropriate moment to be playing this repertoire.
Yeah, I think they're both, almost all of Shostakovich is on some level really emotionally honest.
Yes.
Almost raw. I think the second, my feeling about it is kind of the second is a bit more introvert and the first is a bit more extrovert, but they're both sides of the personality. So what drew you to the cello in the first place? Why that instrument?
It's hard to say. It was something that came very much just instinctively, I think. Of course, as you know, our parents are musicians, and we're constantly practicing and rehearsing in the house. Our father was the first violinist of the Cleveland Quartet for 20 years, and the quartet very often rehearsed in the house. And our mother was, we kind of learned discipline from them, because they always, every single morning they were practicing hours a day when we were in the house. And so we were surrounded by it. And I said to our mother, I'm the older one, so Josh wasn't around for this, but I was around 4, and I said to my mother that I want a cello and a cello teacher.
Right.
And she said, no, you're too young. And I kept asking. So when I was around 4.5, our parents gave me a 16th size cello, and so I started lessons that way. And but they were. They were definitely very involved parents, but in a sense they were a bit, let's say, hippie parents, in that they really let me kind of run wild with the instrument. The first few years that I was playing, there was not too much formal practice going on. I kind of just fell in love with the instrument, and I did my kind of Suzuki pieces for 20 minutes a day, and then I would take the cello into my room and bang around on it and try to play Dvorak Concerto. When I was 4, when I was 16, with every kind of position. Which is the results were pretty horrible to listen to, I'm sure, but that was how I explored the instrument.
For you, Josh, so you started off with violin as your instrument. There's other violinists in the house, but so at what moment did you think, no, what I really want to do is be a conductor? Is that something that just went like that, or did it grow on you, or?
It sort of grew on me. I had a very different experience, because my sister always knew she wanted to be a cellist, and I definitely did not know that I wanted to be a musician until I was about 15.
Okay.
And so I finally decided on it, and then went to conservatory for violin, And we had a wonderful conductor my first year in college, Ludovic Morlot, who maybe you know.
Oh, yeah.
And he was at the time the assistant conductor of the Boston Symphony, and I guess he took as a gig to do the freshman orchestra, which is a thankless job in a conservatory where nobody wanted to be in the orchestra. And he did such an amazing job with us, and he worked so beautifully with us. And I just thought, wow, that's really interesting, like how he's working. And so I just asked him a couple questions about conducting, and he said, just go watch a bunch of videos, and he gave me some recommendations. And one of the videos he recommended was Carlos Kleiber conducting Brahms' Second and the symphony we're playing tonight, Mozart 36. And I went to the DVD library, and I checked out this DVD, and there was a guy standing next to me, and he said, have you seen that before? And I said, no. And he said, it's about to change your life. And
Wow.
I thought that was very high praise for a DVD.
Indeed.
And I put it in, I watched it, and I saw him about a week later, and he said, what did you think? I said, you were right. And it just, that sort of like the light bulb moment, that a certain way of conducting was possible. I think I had always associated conducting with basically dictatorship and being very aggressive, even though I never had a conductor like that. It just was the image I had. And to watch how Kleiber worked in the concert. I now, of course, I know about his rehearsal style, but in the concert with the musicians was just so fascinating and overwhelming to me that I thought that was something I'd be interested in doing.
So here we are doing that actual symphony.
Yeah.
So how, again, a similar question to what I put to Alisa. So you've programmed the Linz Symphony. What do you sort of sit down to do when you study the score and you're coming into the first rehearsal? What's your approach? What do you want to achieve with that?
Well, the first thing I do actually is stop watching the Kleiber video.
Yeah, fair enough.
And put that away, because then I mean, of course, the goal, especially with the amount of recordings that are available, is actually what I've started to do during the pandemic period was I would listen a lot more than I used to, but to a different recording every single time I listened to the piece. I would listen to it differently. So you get a ton of different perspectives. So I would go from Kleiber to Harnoncourt to Ton Koopman to Bruno Walter, and just try to take in all of these different approaches. And then, of course, I have many of my own ideas about Mozart in general. And so you sort of pour those into this symphony, and then really try to figure out, also because I know the orchestra so well, figure out what the orchestra will naturally do well, what we will need to work on. For me, and this isn't a revelation, but Mozart is operatic always. And since we had just done all this Beethoven, I knew one of the things I wanted to work on with the orchestra was to get this sort of singing quality all the time. So, I also took out the violin and practiced all the parts, and just to get ideas. So yeah, it's a very holistic approach.
Yeah.
And you really do have to kind of dig in as deeply as possible, and actually having the time to do that due to the shutdowns and lockdowns was actually kind of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested. I mean, one of the things that I look at in this particular program is that all three of the pieces are in their own way kind of subversive.
Yeah.
You listen to the minuet of the Haydn with the timpani that just keeps coming in the whole time. Shostakovich, of course, very subversive. Yeah. And even the Mozart. Yeah. I mean, how do you find this double level with the Shostakovich? Because there, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, that's what is so exciting for us, that you keep searching for how to improve our way of communicating it to the audience, and it's the duality. Yeah. Of wanting to say so much, and you either can't say it or you have to say it with a poker face, or and this is what I'm always searching for. And it's kind of a lifelong
of course
journey with that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes with Shostakovich there's a sort of black and white thing. It's either it's about Stalin or it's genuine. And I think there's so many layers of complexity to it. I used to think of the Fifth Symphony, for example, the ending as this sort of rebuke of, through D major. But actually, no, it's I think it works on so many levels. It works as a rebuke. It works also as Shostakovich's personal triumph. It works also as propaganda. And I think this piece has less of that because it's later in his life, and there's less of, Stalin's dead at that point. There's less of that. But it's
shades of
still
grey,
extremely
honestly.
ironic and complex at every moment.
And and it's interesting, actually. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the structure of the second movement, which can very easily devolve into a kind of sentimental wallowing in its own tragedy. And this is, I mean, for me, this is exactly what I'm trying to avoid.
Sure.
Because you're forced to keep going. No matter what is happening, you're forced to keep going because it's the only way to survive.
Didn't Rostropovich say it's like a rocking a baby?
well, actually, I played this for Rostropovich when I was 22. I was just I was just getting out of school, and he told me in his wonderful, colorful way of speaking. He said, the way you play it's too emotional, and he said, like the beginning, yes, it's sad. It's like rocking a little baby to sleep. Shh. But when you play, you're suffering. This is not tragic at all. It's not tragic at all. And so that really stuck with me. And that it's a very and it's easy to kind of fall into the more Tchaikovskyan type of emotional expression, which is exactly what I'm trying to avoid. And that's again speaks to the kind of duality of it, that it's on the surface it looks this way, and we have to express it in a very, very different way. And that's what is actually really fun about playing it.
Yes,
that you have to to find different ways of expression and to communicate what's underneath that.
And through these technical challenges as well. Yeah. I mean, I suppose tragedy requires pity. And Chostakovitch doesn't do pity.
No, there's no room for that. There's
exactly.
no room for that. It's,
exactly.
There's a great line he said about, because he talked about he was always fascinated with Jewish music, and he said, a sad person sings a jolly song because they want to show, and that's him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to quote this, it's like comedy is tragedy plus time, right?
Yes.
And so that's really very true in so much of the sarcastic music in Chostakovitch.
Question for you. I mean, Alisa, you're coming back here at intervals. How do you find working with this orchestra? Quite irrespective of what the artistic director thinks.
I'll just go.
No, I know that the orchestra is fantastic, and you know this, and it's very, very responsive, and great musicians, and the artistic director is okay too, and so that all works.
That's a relief.
So no, I always enjoy it.
So a slightly different twist on the same question for you, Josh. You've been here for 5 years now. Have you felt that the orchestra has changed or developed or gone in different directions while you've been here? Or?
The orchestra has changed a lot. There are a lot of new people. Actually, some of the people here are on this poster are not there anymore. And there is a sort of infusion of energy in the group that has really been wonderful to have, and a sort of lightness to the sound.
I've even noticed that, even looking back at those first concerts I did with the orchestra. I mean, obviously you have infinitely more experience than I do of it, but for me, coming at it with a little bit more objectivity, I think, because it's been such spread on intervals.
Well, it's snapshots
this
for
is
you,
exactly
isn't it?
my sense as well. That it's very different.
And one of the things we've been working on since the start was the sort of buoyancy and the kind of brightness to obviously the brighter music, and that has really come so far in a lot of ways. And so I mean, it feels, and but it felt like everything deepened so much, and when we were doing the Mozart and the Haydn, and the Shostakovich too, that it just feels very easy to, I don't have to say much anymore. It's just, I show something and it happens. And they show me something and I can react to it too. So it's a really nice give and take.
Yeah, fantastic.